e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own referral program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the e-commerce marketing podcast, everyone. I am your host, Arlin Robinson, and today we have a very special guest, Steven Kiger, who is the co-founder of Platstack, a digital declutterer that gives anyone a way to organize all of their links from Instagram, YouTube, blogs, podcasts, Facebook groups, discussion forums, and every other source of influence together in one convenient place. Welcome to the podcast, Steven.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. You know, today we're going to be discussing building customer trust, and with all of the multiple channels all over the internet where, you have your direct companies are promoting themselves and you have affiliates and influencers promoting your brand. It's kind of difficult these days to kind of make sure everybody is on the same page with regards to promotion, and how do you get potential customers to trust all of these sources of information and promotions. And so that's the name of the game today. But before we get into all of that and before we dive deep, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your background and specifically how you got into what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. My background specifically is mostly in graphic design. So I mostly self-taught myself back in high school. Back then, you actually had to go buy books at Barnes & Noble to learn a new craft. So I'd go down to the Barnes & Noble, buy a big old thick book and learn how to work on Photoshop and Illustrator. Really enjoyed the creativity of creating things on computers. And so I self-taught myself through high school, worked in college. I ended up creating my own digital creative agency right outside of college, worked there for about 10 years. And I got really interested in data. Specifically, I'd have a lot of clients where I'd build a website for them and they'd ask me, hey, what do I do now? And I didn't really know the question or how they answer that question, specifically about, how do you drive traffic to your site? And more importantly, how do you capture data, qualitative and quantitative data, to make sure that you are specifically talking to the right audience and you're delivering a really good customer experience. And so after that, I actually formed a company with two partners called Rocket Source. And Rocket Source is a progressive digital consultancy and strategize for, large Fortune 500 companies. In regards to Platstack, we also have a company, what we call Rocket Source Labs, and it's an incubation company where we get to be able to create really cool products. And Platstack is one of the products outside that we've created from our Rocket Labs division.
That's awesome. It sounds like you really do have a diverse kind of array of experiences, and you've been able to touch a lot of different areas and industries. So it's always good to have that solid background, and because I know that can definitely help you with all of the clients that you're working with.
I've always experience. Absolutely. I've always loved working with a lot of different clients. We have clients in the B2B space, B2C space. Every client's different. Every customer is different. And it's always really interesting to hear how companies are doing it. I remember back, this was probably 10 years ago. I worked for a company that sold, and this is crazy, but they sold like protein powder for pit bulls. It was like, to bulk up your pit bulls.
Right.
And they're still around and they do fantastic. It is a great product. And, it's crazy. It's like, what a small niche, right? So something so unique, but they found the audience and they kill it and they do really well.
That's awesome. And you are right. You don't get more niche than protein powder for
there's
pit
a little
bulls.
There's a little spiff for them.
Yeah. I didn't know there was such a thing, but it's if you can think of it, and there's a market out there for it. You never know what you can sell. So that's awesome. As I was saying at the beginning, a lot of what businesses and specifically e-commerce businesses need to do these days is establish themselves in the marketplace solidly, just because it's so cluttered. There's so many options for people when they're looking to buy things, and there's some good things, there's some bad things, and then there's even some fraudulent things. So there's a mix of everything out there. And a lot of times people are leery, especially when it comes to brands that they may never have heard of before. And so these days, why do you think it's really important to establish that customer trust initially?
Yeah, great question. Really, I think today, the customers today, and again, we deal with a lot of different companies and large companies, and customers specifically are they're so savvy and they're so sophisticated, right? You have your iPhone or your Android phone, you have everything at your fingertips to find and authenticate, whether this is a good company or bad company. And so really for us and for companies out there and the e-commerce platforms out there, trust is fleeting, and consumers they're getting more weary about buying products that they may have never heard of. And so, really the big thing that you need to do is establish trust, first of all, and then ultimately really create amazing experiences digitally and offline. I think if you think about Netflix and Amazon as kind of the two forefronts of really good customer experience, right? On Netflix, for example, I might be watching a show on my phone. I go home and I turn it on my TV, and it's in the exact same spot that I left it. And then I go into my bed and I turn on my iPad, and it's in the exact same spot I left from the TV. And customers are expecting that nowadays. And so if you can create really good digital experiences, Amazon is another great experience, right? Where you literally with one button can order something in 2 days or even 1 day, it's there. And so how do companies compete with them? It's about authenticity. It's about creating really good digital experiences. And then I think most importantly is telling the why, right? Telling the why of the business. Why did you start? I want to buy from authenticated businesses. I want to know your story. I want to know why you created XYZ product. So creating authenticity and telling your why is super important.
You're so right about that. And I've had this conversation with a lot of the other guests, and it's really kind of a recurring theme. And a lot of times businesses don't really realize the importance of it, because here at OmniStar, we deal with e-commerce businesses all the time that are using our affiliate software. So I kind of see across the board so many different types of businesses. And a lot of times, unfortunately, it's a lot of business owners and brands, they're kind of in a hurry to get out there, get their product out there, and then just sell. Of course, there was a reason why they're doing it. Their whole vision and their product, it was birthed out of somewhere. But I think a lot of times these brands and the business owners may not think that it's important. They just know that they got to get out there and they got to sell. But the telling the why is super important. And that can definitely help build trust, because I know personally when I'm looking at different brands and especially brands that don't have a big name and maybe new, one of the first things I always look at is, I go to the about page because I'm always really curious as to who's behind the curtain, so to speak, and why did they create the product? What was their motivation? And just who really they are. I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one that does this, but it's something that it's one of the first pages that I go to. Once I go to the home page, it's a new brand. I'm like, okay, really interesting product. This is a little different. Who's behind this? How did they create this? And maybe I'm not the only person that does that, but I think it's something a lot of people do. And it's very important that you establish a clear why and your whole vision and mission and make it available to everyone.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about who was kind of that first company to give back and really take off, Tom's Shoes is the one that comes to my mind, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, you buy a pair of shoes and we give them back. They were really one of the first to be like, wow, there is that why. What is the reason why I created this company? Well, I wanted to create, I went to Peru, I think it was Peru, and saw all these kids that didn't have shoes on, and I wanted to give back. And they just took off. And now think about every industry out there now has that same model of, buy a water bottle and we'll give water away. And it goes back to the authenticity. It goes back to the why, the core why. Customers buy from an emotional stance first, right? There's got to be an emotional trigger before the logical side kicks in. And that comes back to that fundamental why of why am I going to spend my money at this company versus the other one? It's not just price. People think it's price, but it's not. There's a lot of emotional side to buying behavior as well. Yeah,
there's definitely the emotional side that people really a lot of times don't put a lot of emphasis on, but the majority of the purchases are done from an emotional decision, and it's something kind of a gut feeling about a particular brand or a particular product. That's totally so true. Now, one of the things that I alluded at the beginning of the podcast is the fact that these days selling online, there's really a lot to it, and there's so many channels that are out there where a brand is promoting their products or services. There's all of the social media channels, there's of course, we have the main ones that everybody's aware of, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Instagram, the LinkedIn, of course, the main ones. But outside of those, there's probably hundreds of other ancillary social networks that you have the potential of reaching customers through. And aside from that, then there's also other marketing channels through, whether it's the pay-per-click marketing, whether it's, Google Ads and all of those different channels. And all of these things are to reach people and to drive customers to your site so you can get traffic. Of course, one big area these days is utilizing influencers and affiliates to promote your brand. You're getting people that have a kind of a ready-made or built-in network, whether it's somebody that has just a few thousands of people that are following them, or hundreds of thousands and on upwards to 1 million. That's really kind of the hot thing these days, these influencers and these affiliates that are promoting brands for a commission. The issue with that, because you talked a lot about trust and how you gain the trust of customers, you make sure you kind of have cohesive messaging, you establish your why, but then when you kind of pull things back and you're saying, okay, we're going to be allowing all of these influencers and affiliates to promote our brand, how do you really get customers to trust these influencers or affiliates that aren't really a part of your company, but they're really just promoting on behalf of your company? Or is it even possible to get that trust when it's coming from these outside sources?
Great question. I think the most important thing that people need to remember is authenticity. We've all been on Instagram. We've seen an ad, a paid ad from some celebrity,
right?
And they're getting paid. And you can just tell. You can tell they have probably never used the product.
Right.
They're getting paid to sell this. Versus if you find someone, I think if I take a step back, I think the brands out there, they need to spend the time to find influencers who are in their space. If you're selling a camping equipment, find an influencer that is a camper and find someone who's used your product, because that you can just tell the passion is so different when someone truly believes in the product they're selling. And so I would say, if anything, get authentic voices, people that use the product, people that love the product. There's platforms out there where, I won't throw any names out there, but there are some really cool platforms where you can actually scrub your sales list from, let's say, Shopify. So you have, let's say 1,000 people that have purchased your product. They will actually scrub that list and look and see if they have any influence out there in the marketplace. Meaning, you might have some guy that bought your product that has 100,000 followers on YouTube that you have no idea who it is. They just spent money on your product. Obviously, there's authenticity there. Why not reach out to them and say, hey, let's have a chat. Why did you buy our product? We'd love to hear more. Maybe we can give you some free products, do some more authentic messaging around it. So I think the ultimate goal with any of your brand ambassadors, affiliates are obviously a little bit different, but brand ambassadors specifically, is find people that love your product, that were not paid to love your product, and you'll get such a better ROI than just randomly find someone that has 10,000 members and followers and hope for the best.
That is so true. And I think a lot of times the brands that are out there kind of get sucked into the fact that when they talk about influencers, they see these large numbers, like you said, the tens of thousands of followers, the hundreds of thousands of followers. And they're like, I want this guy. I want this guy to promote my brand, or this lady to promote my brand, because it's going to my stuff's going to go viral just because the sheer numbers. But you made a good point. That's not necessarily the case, because you could have an influencer that has such a huge audience, but if their audience is not really made up of people that are even halfway interested in your particular niche, it doesn't even matter. So, the example that you made of camping is a good one. So let's say this influencer wants to promote your camping tent, but he has hundreds of thousands of followers, but let's say 80% or 90% of those people have never even camped or are not even thinking about camping. Then, you can just look at it like that. You can pretty much just automatically see what type of return you're going to get on that. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, if you were to compare two influencers, right, if you're choosing one or the other, one has 100,000 followers, either closely related to your industry, but then you have a guy that has 2,000 followers, but they are so niche, they're engaged, they're commenting all the time, they're liking all your stuff. You're going to get a better ROI off those 2,000 because they are your niche. Those are the people that are buying your product. So don't just look at a number. And the other thing you got to think about is Instagram and Facebook, they're all limiting reach, right? You got to pay
Mm-hmm.
for that. So even if you have 100,000 members or followers on Instagram, you might only get 2,000 reach. So versus if you get 2,000 reach from a guy that has 2,000 followers that are super niche, that's such a better ROI. So, and it's going to be cheaper.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense to really just try to focus and be a little bit more targeted when you're looking to outreach and find these influencers. Now, another thing that I know brands may be wondering, and this is something that I know has come up before in my discussions with different brands that are getting influencers to promote, because we of course talk a lot about trust and getting customers to trust these influencers. But what are some ways that you can get influencers to actually adhere to your promotional and brand guidelines? Because when you get these outside people promoting, you do want them to project a certain image, use certain guidelines, use certain graphics and those things, but you can only control people to a certain degree. What are some things that you can do to help?
Yeah, obviously, the more information you can give them, the better. The more examples you can give them, what to do, what not to do. From like a promotional standpoint, if you're doing like banner ads or anything like that, there's great sites out there to pull all the assets from, one company. But again, I think it fully goes back to that authenticity. If you have someone that is loving your product and they want to sell it and they use it, it's going to flow naturally. Versus, I think we've all seen these paid Instagram people just literally copy and paste what they're supposed to say into the ad itself. And it literally says, paste this here. Right.
Right.
Like that's just not authentic versus saying that to someone who is going to love your product. So I think the biggest thing, again, if you can find authenticity through people that love your product, obviously the easiest. If it's someone that you've never connected with and they don't really know your product, I think the more information and the more examples you can give them, the better.
For sure. Now as we get ready to kind of close things out, one of the things that I often see is we have all of these people that are out there outreaching for you on your behalf for your brand. And then also as a brand, you're doing different things to gain the trust of your customers. And you mentioned authenticity as being really kind of a key thing. You're being authentic on a specific category or a specific subject. And so a lot of this has to do with, I guess, what would be considered inbound marketing. So for instance, if you've got people that are maybe subscribed to your list or follow you on the various social channels, obviously you want to use those as vehicles to sell your product. But at the same time, when it comes to, inbound marketing, you still have to do a fair amount of education and come off as an authority and an authentic authority. So this is something that I know a lot of brands struggle with. And really, how do you really find that fine line or sweet spot when it comes to the outreach and gaining your customers' trust, but still coming off as an expert, but not really coming off too salesy, where you're not just pushing your products down people's throats?
That's the big thing, right? That's the salesy side. Really, ultimately, if you can provide value to those customers. So if we go back to that camping example, it'd be great if you could segment out your emails to certain geolocations and send those users from Utah. I'm from Utah. What are the best 5 camping spots in Utah? What are some tips and tricks that you can do for, specifically this tent or, whatever product you're selling? If you can provide value outside just the brand itself, YouTube links, articles, just things that people can do to skill up or better understand how to use this product, that's going to take you away from the salesy, like, hey, just buy this product because it's awesome. Hey, this is what it's going to solve. Here's the pain points it solves. And say, hey, we know you're a camper and here's some provided value that we think you're going to like. We've essentially curated all this knowledge and we've put it into an email. Or, again, our product does that through Platstack, where you can curate knowledge and put it into a stack and send it off. That's going to be a huge value add to clients or to potential customers, because they're seeing a lot more value than just saying, hey, buy our product.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that a brand has to be cognizant of is you have to, as a business owner or as a marketer, you have to put yourself in the shoes of your customer and kind of step away from your platform, because it can be hard to do, because of course, as someone that's running a brand or marketing it, you already know the ins and outs of your product, but the potential customer doesn't. So it's like, what are those things that are going to help them make a decision about your product or help them when they become a customer. So like you said, an example of camping again, if you're selling camping tents, a great resource before and even after is maybe the do's and don'ts when selecting your campground area, or, the
Yeah.
do's and don'ts of assembling a tent. That's something that could be applicable not only for a specific brand, but for anybody that's going out camping, no matter what tent. And so you got to think of it like that. What are these resources out there that are going to, help empower people regardless of the fact that aren't necessarily product specific to the brand's product, but just more general knowledge type questions. And so, yeah, I think that's very important.
Absolutely. And just one more thing I think hopefully your audience will love to think about is everyone knows the traditional sales funnel, right? You get prospects in and they go down the funnel. We at RockSource, we believe you actually need to flip that on the side and imagine a bow tie where you got your pre-purchase on the left side, you got your sell in the middle, and then you got your post-purchase on the right side. There's so much value in getting brand loyalists and people on the other side of the funnel. Your sell doesn't stop when they put their credit card in. There's so much more opportunity to get them more engaged, to get them interested in cross promotions, or even just, again, like we talked about, educating them on other things they can do. So everyone should remember, your sell doesn't stop when they put that credit card in. Make sure you're communicating with them after the purchase. You want to get to the point where they're telling their friends and family. And the only way to do that is them to get really invested in your products and, really start to analyze, what you can do better to communicate to them after the purchase.
Yeah, for sure. And that spreading the word can work two ways, actually. Like you said, if they're really satisfied with your product and your company, they're going to spread the word, tell their friends, their family, and point people your way. So it's definitely good. But people are going to do that for you to actually have some type of referral program in place. So that's definitely something to think about. But at the same time, what brands definitely have to realize is that people are going to spread the word both ways. If they have a bad experience, then that's also something they're going to tell people about. Or they're going to say, oh, I had a terrible experience with this particular camping product or this particular tent. Don't buy this, whatever you do. So you have to be careful because, it can go two ways. So
and you definitely need to get that qualitative data as quickly as possible, right? Again, after the purchase, send them emails. How are you doing? What can we do to help you? If they do post on social media, don't ignore it. You need to answer their questions and see if you can get them satisfied. Yeah. Because just to your point, they will tell all their friends if they hate the product. They might only tell two if they love it.
Definitely. In this crazy world of social media and internet access and all of these channels give people the ability to express their opinion and reach the world. Yeah, as a brand, you have to be on your toes, and it does keep brands honest. So I think
which is really good, right? I think it's a good thing.
It is. It definitely keeps things on the up and up for the most part, for sure. Well, I think all of this information, Steven, that you've enlightened us on has been awesome. And I know our listeners are going to get a lot out of it because these are things that any brand should really do, no matter what size, no matter how young or old that they are. Gaining trust is really very, very important. And now, as I close things out, I always like to switch gears here at the end just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. So why don't you let us know one fun fact that you can let our audience know about you?
I'm a big outdoors guy. I actually just got back from skiing Switzerland and Italy. So I skied the Swiss Alps for the first time, which was a blast.
Wow.
So huge traveler, love to do it. Big outdoor guy, play a lot of golf. And, ultimately like I said, for the very beginning, I love hearing people's unique little niches that they sell on. I love to hear the stories of some guy started this company, is just killing it. There's nothing more satisfying than knowing if I was a little part of that, that would be awesome. If not, I'm a huge believer in entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur since high school and just keep killing it. I know it's hard, but keep working at it. Don't give up and it will come.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for that. And thanks for sharing. I'm also a skier. I haven't been skiing as much as I should because I live in Florida. So it's got to take a little trip in order to get to an area that's halfway decent. But I've heard a lot about the Swiss Alps. So at some point, I'll probably pick your brain.
It was fun. Yeah, Zermatt is a beautiful area.
Okay, sure. Great. Yeah, I'll have to definitely pick your brain a little bit and find out where you went and how everything worked out for sure. Well, lastly, if our audience and our listeners would like to pick your brain any more about gaining customer trust and loyalty, what is the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best. Just my name, Steven with a V, Kiger, like tiger with a K, so Kiger. You can feel free to email us. You can go to our website, rocksource.co, or Platstack, which is our new platform. It's essentially a platform to stack your links. You can check it out, platstack.com.
Great. That is awesome, Steven. Well, thank you once again for joining us today on the E-commerce Marketing Podcast.
No problem. Thanks, Arlin. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast. Do you need to get more feedback and reviews from your customers and improve your customer retention? We have made it easy to do all of this with our customer feedback software. Just visit osifeedback.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's osifeedback.com. If you've enjoyed this episode of the E-commerce Marketing Podcast, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know.